Welcome to part 2 of the Radio Iceberg. If you haven't seen part 1, a link will be provided in the description below. But don't worry, you aren't missing much if you haven't watched it, as I mostly went over basic radio knowledge such as AM/FM radio, shortwave, amateur, walkie-talkies, and other well-known infrastructure. Today's video goes over section 3, surface waters, where more niche radio trivia lay. From CB radio pirates to strange behavior on analog television channel 6 in NTSC regions, we are starting to descend in stranger radio territories. Disclaimer: this video is for entertainment purposes only and is not recommended to be used as research material. Section 3. Surface waters. Emergency alert system. We're starting things off with a bang with the EAS, the Emergency Alert System. In the late 90s, the United States has adopted the EAS to become an official warning system. If activated by relevant authorities, the EAS will interrupt scheduled programming on AM, FM, and satellite radio stations, as well as cable, satellite, and terrestrial television stations to transmit an emergency message.
This is a monthly coordinated test of the broadcast stations and cable systems of your area. Equipment that can quickly warn you during emergencies is being tested. If this had been an actual emergency, such as a hurricane or major disaster, official messages would have followed the alert tone. This station serves the 5 boroughs of New York City. This concludes this test of the emergency alert system.
The most well-known type of warning are the weather alerts, from severe thunderstorms to tornadoes, but of course, any type of alerts can be transmitted, whether local or national. A few selected radio stations, such as WLW 700 in Cincinnati, acquired upgrades such as studio shelters, alongside generators and fuel to survive any catastrophe and keep the transmission going. WLW is one of about 80 primary entry point stations, which are radio stations in direct contact with FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. They are mostly full-power AM stations, with several FM exceptions, in order to cover as much ground as possible, as full-power AM transmitters reach much farther than full-power FM stations. If a nationwide alert were to affect the United States, all primary entry point stations will receive such notice. Once a primary entry point station receives a national alert, it broadcasts it over the airwaves. Several secondary radio stations receive the broadcasts and retransmit the alert to even more stations in order to form a robust and redundant daisy chain of radio stations. In recent years, the WEA, or the Wireless Emergency Alert, got deployed to transmit alerts to compatible cellular phones in the appropriate area of the alerts. Radio stations in video games. The earliest example of radio stations in a video game I could find is the 1986 Sega arcade game Outrun, allowing players to choose between several soundtracks in-game. However, one of the games that revolutionized this concept had to be Metropolis Street Racer for the Sega Dreamcast, released in 2000. With heavy inspirations from Grand Theft Automobile 2, released in 1999, Metropolis Street Racer, or MSR for short, turned the whole radio concept up a notch. In addition to creating several fictional radio stations per location for various music genres, recording real-life ads from real local businesses from the cities in question, and even having the singer T.J. Davis, who has worked on Sonic R previously, to record some of the game's original soundtrack, MSR partnered with none other than Kenwood for the visual representation of the stereo faceplates. Players could also create their own mix by burning virtual CDs in-game, which they can, of course, insert their favorite Kenwood radio. All in all, MSR really took this whole radio concept seriously with great realism. Of course, the Grand Theft Auto series is probably the most well-known example of this, with fan favorites such as Los Santos Rock Radio in GTA 5, hosted by none other than Kenny Loggins. What is impressive about GTA 5's radio system is that the fictional in-game news bulletin follow the major events in the story, increasing the illusion of immersion to the player. Traveler's Information Station. A Traveler's Information Station is a low-power, usually AM, station which broadcasts travel information pertinent to the local area intended for tourists. Within the United States, common examples usually consist of low-power AM stations on 530 kHz and on the expanded band, which we covered on the previous video. But, of course, there are exceptions. These stations can also be used to broadcast important live and local information during an emergency, as cellular towers tend to overload and become unreliable. These radio stations are also present in various other countries around the world, including here in Canada. I ended up finding a list of such stations, but what I found was something peculiar. Before talking about that peculiarity, I did find two stations which fit the description, which will make a good example on what the average station is. CJNG-FM and CKGAF-FM. Both stations are located in Quebec City, radiating at around 200 watts of power each. CJNG is English, whereas CKJF is French. Both broadcasts information regarding local tourism and information about the city 24/7, and I assume is intended for incoming tourists arriving in automobiles to listen to in order to inform themselves on the city at large. Now here's the strange thing I found on the list. CKAC 730 is listed as a Traveler's Information Station. For a few years now, CKAC has become a 24/7 traffic information station managed by both Cogeco Média and the Ministère des Transports du Québec. Without going into too much history, as CKAC will become an entry for later in this iceberg, CKAC has a transmission power of 50 kilowatts, the maximum legal limit within the United States and Canada. It doesn't really fit the description of low-power transmitter we have seen earlier. What's stranger are its other transmitters. CKAC has had, dating before its format switch to Montreal 24/7 traffic radio, several rebroadcasting transmitters around the province in remote areas, especially near hydroelectric dams and other extremely distant villages, ranging from a few hundred watts to a measly 10 watts of transmission power, as is the case of station VF2155 FM on 103.9 MHz in the middle of absolutely nowhere. The question is, why do these rebroadcasters still exist in the Montreal traffic era of CKAC? Are the people in these remote regions enjoying hearing about Montreal traffic jams? Maybe some of the Hydro-Quebec workers are a little homesick and want to hear familiar voices from Montreal. I don't know, I'm just trying to make sense of this strange situation. I find this more amusing more than anything, that the voice of the radio host sitting in a studio in Montreal explaining local traffic information can be heard hundreds upon hundreds of kilometers in the far north for no practical reason. Someone somewhere keeps renewing the licenses of these rebroadcasters too. Radio Quiet Zone. In parts of West Virginia and a small slice of Maryland, United States, there is about 33,000 square kilometers of area with extreme limits when it comes to radio transmissions in order to protect the operations of the Green Bank telescope. The closer you get to the facility, the less radio equipment anyone is allowed to operate. This includes cellular phones, Wi-Fi routers, and even microwave ovens. Residents who desire to watch television would turn to satellite or cable, as terrestrial television is almost non-existent. BBC Radio 4, more specifically the Droitwich transmitter. This video was meant to be finished a long time ago, but due to the delays, I regret to inform you that the long-wave transmitter of BBC Radio 4 located in Droitwich in the United Kingdom is no longer operational. That transmitter, which used to transmit at a frequency of 198 kHz, had a power of 500 kilowatts, which, to give you an idea on how powerful that is, a full-power AM radio station in Canada and the United States does not surpass 50 kilowatts, and in Mexico, only 150 kilowatts, despite having an immense coverage area with such power at medium-wave frequencies. Knowing this, it isn't hard to imagine that the Droitwich transmitter covered an immense area, including much of the continental Europe. The shutdown was a sad day for any radio enthusiasts, as longwave has been in the decline in recent times. Many are unhappy with this recent shutdown, as longwave could have been a very useful tool for emergency transmissions, especially paired with the two other BBC Radio 4 transmitters in Scotland. Another fun fact about BBC Radio 4 is that, alongside its audio transmissions, it also transmitted the time of day signal and the radio teleswitch signal, which was received by some models of electricity meters to switch between rates. To learn more about longwave, please watch part 1 of my Radio Iceberg series. Alert Ready, or En Alerte. Alert Ready, or En Alerte in French, is the Canadian equivalent of the EAS we've seen earlier. Alert Ready may override regularly scheduled programming on AM/FM radio, along with cable, satellite, IP, and terrestrial television. Cellular phones may also get an alert as long as they are not connected to a 3G tower, as, for some bizarre reason, the alerts only get dispatched to devices connected to a 4G LTE or 5G tower, despite the protocol existing on 3G. Alert Ready provides weather alerts, Amber Alerts, or any other types of emergency communications. It uses different tones than the EAS.
Ce qui suit est un message du Système national d'alerte au public.
À 15h34 heure avancée de l'Est le jeudi, Environnement Canada a émis une alerte d'orage violent pour le centre du Québec. Une attention et des précautions additionnelles devraient être exercées près et autour des localités suivantes: Drummondville. Les météorologues d'Environnement Canada surveillent un orage très dangereux pouvant produire des rafales très fortes, de la grêle pouvant atteindre la taille d'une balle de baseball, et de la pluie forte. Mettez-vous immédiatement à l'abri si un phénomène météorologique menaçant s'approche. De nombreux éclairs sont probables, et il y a toujours un risque de tornade avec un orage.
C'était un message du Système national d'alerte au public. Maintenant, retournons à la programmation régulière.
Par contre, il y a des...
Super Bowl Channel. The Super Bowl channel has nothing to do with sports. Why it is called Super Bowl, I have no idea. But it is the informal name for CB Channel 6. Due to extremely lax and borderline inexistent enforcements by the FCC, there are practically no rules on CB radio. This is how illegal CB operators get away with by running amplifiers that does thousands of watts, or even tens of thousands of watts. To give you an idea on how illegal that is, the legal power limit for CB radio is 4 watts. Not 400, not 40, but 4.0. These illegal CB operators may talk to each other daily with no consequences. Legal CB users, including enthusiasts, contractors, and truckers, tolerate this activity as long as the illegal users stay on Channel 6 or 11. Over time, Channel 9 has also become a Super Bowl channel despite the fact that it is the emergency channel. FCC Part 15 and RSS 210. FCC Part 15 and RSS 210 are very similar radio rules from both the United States and Canada. These rules cover quite a lot, but I want to specifically focus on the AM and FM part of it. It states that, within limits, anyone without a license can transmit on the AM broadcast band on 532 to 1700 kHz or the FM band on 88 to 108 MHz as long as their transmission power is below 100 milliwatts and that they respect specific antenna restrictions. This rule allows the existence of, say, personal FM transmitters to exist, often used by motorists who wishes to listen to their iPods but don't have an aux. Many make use of this to create their own legal unlicensed radio station, though of course, the range of the signal would be very poor due to the restrictions. It would be, nonetheless, a very cool weekend project. I do see a section of RSS 210 discussing about long wave. Between 160 and 190 kHz, anyone may transmit at 1 watt of power with a 15-meter wire antenna. It would be cool to experiment with this band in the future. NTSC TV Channel 6. Have you ever heard of the term Franken FM? As in Frankenstein Station or Frankenstation. If we analyze the bandwidth of NTSC Channel 6, we can observe that its audio is on 87.75 MHz. It turns out that not only does most consumer FM radios can go as low as 87.7 or even 87.5 MHz, but NTSC audio tracks are modulated in regular FM. This means that if there was a television station in your area broadcasting on Channel 6, you could reliably pick up the audio portion of it with any radio. Such is the case of WTVJ NBC6 Miami. Here's a demonstration of the phenomenon before they had to shut down their analog signal for good during the digital television transition.
For 14 years, our viewers have tuned into 87.7 on the radio dial to hear NBC6 broadcasts.
Another live update is coming your way in 25 minutes.
But come Friday, June 12th at noon, 87.7 goes away forever.
It's the TV transmitter that's broadcasting to the car radio. And you're just listening to the audio portion of that TV transmitter. Now, since that TV transmitter is in the analog range, that transmitter is getting turned off on June 12th, and only the digital transmitters will broadcast after that. And so since that transmitter is getting turned off, that audio from 87.7 is also going to be turned off.
Franken FMs are television stations on Channel 6, which main programming is audio-based and targets radio listeners rather than TV viewers.
Timeless and memorable at whatever she does. MeTV FM.
Thank you for watching part 2 of the Radio Iceberg. I know I haven't gone through all of the entries in the surface water section, but I was out of time, so what can you do? I hope you enjoyed this iceberg nonetheless, and I hope to see you in part 3. Thanks for watching.